Around the middle of April 2026, I rewatched the original Avatar: The Last Airbender show on Netflix to prepare myself for the upcoming movie, and my god, this show was way better than I remember it being. It was filled with amazing characters, rich lore, fantastic world building, and an unforgettable score that still gets me emotional even if I listen to it on its own. And just right after I finished the rewatch, I took it upon myself to rewatch a certain movie that was made in 2010. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am of course talking about M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender. I briefly went into why fans didn't like it in my previous video on why being an Avatar: The Last Airbender fan sucks, but I wanted to make this video after rewatching the film for myself for research purposes. During my viewing since the time I rented it from Video Easy back in the start of 2011, yes, I'm that old, I took some notes to my close friend on Discord on why this movie is bad. And I also thought to myself, why is this movie so bad, and was it really Shyamalan's fault? So strap in and ponder the question, who is to blame for The Last Airbender? Our story begins back on January 8th, 2007. Paramount Pictures announced a trilogy based on Nickelodeon's hit show, Avatar: The Last Airbender. At the time, the show had just finished its second season, and fans had to wait for the conclusion to Aang's story. M. Night Shyamalan, of all people, was tapped to write, produce, and direct the whole thing, much like how Sir Peter Jackson directed all of the Lord of the Rings movies. But why did they pick Shyamalan, of all people, to make a trilogy based on their hit show? Well, to be fair, the guy was responsible for such acclaimed work such as the Oscar-nominated Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs, while his more recent works like The Village and Lady in the Water were proof that the cracks were beginning to show in his filmography, to say the least. And the film he would make before The Last Airbender, The Happening, would be a career low for him. But here's the thing. His daughter was the reason he chose to direct this trilogy in the first place, because she would cosplay as Katara for Halloween, and they would watch every episode, and he was intrigued to see how the final season would turn out. He grew to love the show to a point where he even got to interview the show's creators, Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. Shyamalan seemed so genuine about his love for the show that some fans started to think, maybe M. Night Shyamalan might find redemption with this movie based on Avatar. Surely nothing can go wrong as soon as production begins, right? Right? When casting began, that's where things weren't looking good for this movie. The main trio of Aang, Katara, and Sokka were all going to be played by white actors. Noah Ringer was assigned to be Aang, Jackson Rathbone was going to provide some comedy, or lack thereof, as Sokka, and Nicola Peltz Beckham was going to be the only waterbender from the Southern Water Tribe, Katara. According to an interview with People magazine, Shyamalan stated that he didn't want to make this movie without Nicola as Katara. I'm sure he said that while Nelson Peltz was holding him at gunpoint. And hoo boy, if you thought that the trio of white people was bad enough, wait until you hear about who they originally wanted as Zuko. Pop singer Jesse McCartney was originally offered for the role of the Banished Prince, but that wouldn't last long when Dev Patel would take over the role in February of 2009, as tour dates conflicted with a boot camp scheduled for the cast. But according to McCartney, it was due to political reasons that got him replaced before the beginning of principal photography. And he had no say in the matter. Our leads did show some enthusiasm while they learned they got the roles of the iconic characters. Ringer and Peltz were fans of the show, and Ringer was a professional at Taekwondo since age 10. He even earned the nickname of Avatar ever since he began to shave his head during training to cool off. And you can kind of see it if you add the familiar blue arrow tattoos of your average air nomad. Back to Dev Patel as Zuko. Before the release of his breakout role in Danny Boyle's Slumdog Millionaire, Patel auditioned for the role of Zuko, and it impressed Shyamalan so much he called the actor to let him know that the role was his, and his alone. While he was filming Slumdog Millionaire in India, he would finish a take and tune into episodes of the show to understand the character he was assigned to do. And as you can see in the final film, you could tell he did his homework like Ringer and Peltz. Here's what Sean Tube, Iroh's actor, had to say about the guy on Fangoria.
He isn't necessarily bad, he just has a great deal of build-up anger and forgets to consider others. I think people will understand that he's not bad, he's just angry and hurting because he really wants his father to love him, but his father is too busy with other things.
The rest of the cast would be filled out with Spider-Man 2's Asif Manvi as Admiral Zhao, Seychelle Gabrielle as Princess Yue, Francis Gunyan as Master Paku, Damon Gupton as Monk Gyatso, Catherine Houghton as Gran, John Noble aka King Denethor as the Dragon Spirit, an original character that replaces Kyoshi and Roku, and Kiwi actor Cliff Curtis as Firelord Ozai. Fun fact, I met Cliff Curtis during the New Zealand premiere of Fast and Furious 10, and I told him he was great in Muru and Avatar: The Way of Water. True story. Now here comes the fun part where we get to discuss controversy! The single fact that our trio is comprised of white people, and the evil Fire Nation was a mix of Indian, Persian, and Polynesian people, really triggered a lot of fans and non-fans, as they would accuse the film of being racist, which didn't help since Dragon Ball Evolution came out a year before this travesty.
To take this incredibly loved children's series and really distort not only the ethnicity of the individual characters but the message of acceptance and cultural diversity that the original series advocated is a huge blow.
Michael Lee of RaceBending.com explained, RaceBending.com was created as a way to boycott the movie, and many people would share their disdain towards the film during its production to eventual release. The hatred grew so big, it even got the attention of Media Action Network for Asian Americans, as they also joined in on the boycott. Because, as you all know, the world of Avatar is filled with Asian and Eskimo characters, and not a single Caucasian character is in sight. If this show came out today, you would have a tirade of anti-woke grifters whining about how it's white erasure. Shyamalan and Paramount would come to defend themselves by claiming that The Last Airbender would be, quote,
the most culturally diverse tentpole movies ever released, period.
And Paramount would back up with a statement saying,
the movie has 23 credited speaking roles, more than half of which feature Asian and Pan-Asian actors of Korean, Japanese, and Indian descent. The filmmaker's interpretation reflects the myriad qualities that have made this series a global phenomenon. We believe fans of the original and new audiences alike will respond positively once they see it.
What are you, out of your mind?
Never thought I'd see a studio and director shoot themselves in the foot with those words, but here we are. Principal photography began on March 13, 2009, after spending pre-production around late 2008. The late great Andrew Lesney would serve as cinematographer, and let me tell you, it was a big shoot where they started in Greenland for the Southern Water Tribe, reading Ontoloni Township and the William Penn Memorial Fire Tower in Pennsylvania for some temples and exterior shots, and Philadelphia for Agnikela, because you can't have an M. Night Shyamalan movie shot in Philly. After 7 months of shooting, it would wrap up on September 26, 2009. Fun fact during the shoot, Nicola Peltz would often catch up with schoolwork after filming her scenes. At the same time, the visual effects would be handled by Industrial Light and Magic, with Pablo Hellman, the VFX supervisor for Star Wars Episode II Attack of the Clones, the Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles duology, and many of Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese's movies in the 2000s onward. The hardest part of handling the bending in the film, with half of the elements shown, water and fire, there was a dual process of making the elements look realistic but act in unrealistic ways. The year prior, they did VFX work on Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. The fire effects for that movie were basically tests to see what ILM can do with firebending, as were practical references involving flames being pushed to giant air fans. To create the airbending effect, visual effects art director Christian Alzam and digital matte department supervisor Barry Williams took inspiration from the animated series and focused on the dust and snow particles rather than seeing the air itself. When it came to the hybrid animals the show is known for, the team studied real-world animal examples of the same size and weight of the animated character. and then produced hybrids of different species. For example, Momo's flying was based off of a real giant fruit bat, Appa's limbs looked more realistic like an actual bison than the short, stubby appearance we're used to, and the Komodo rhinos were, just plain Komodo dragons. Boo! Also during post-production, the film will be converted to 3D in the last minute, which costs around $5 million to $10 million, all thanks to James Cameron's Avatar making $2.8 billion at the box office in 2009. To help speed up the process and make it to the July release date, 30 minutes had to be removed from the movie, including a scene with Suki and the Kyoshi warriors, Sokka being more like his animated counterpart, Katara training with Master Paku, as well as an alternate ending where Ozai receives news about the Siege of the North being a complete failure, leading him to burn a field. That's about as stupid of a decision as much as the way the movie pronounces some of the names incorrectly to be, quote, more respectful to their cultures, or some crap like that. While that was going on, we'd be bombarded with trailers and commercials that promised to bring the world of the show to real life, a toy line that finally gave us a Katara action figure, books, and video games for the Wii and DS. Things were genuinely looking up. Well, for those who are unaware of the race-swapping controversy, the film would officially make its premiere on June 10th, 2010 at the Alice Tully Hall in New York, and would make its debut a month later in July 1st. While the reception was... well, you know where this is going.
I think...
I love it!
Really? No. My back!
The film was hated by fans and non-fans alike, garnering a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 3.9 out of 10 score on IMDb, a 20 on Metacritic, and a 1.2 average score on Letterboxd. They all had the same reasons on why they hated the movie. The plot was rushed, the acting was bad, the bending looked awful, and it was overall a poor adaptation of the show's first season. The movie's biggest critics were the creators themselves, Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. In a 2014 interview with Nerdist, they said that the project was given the go-ahead without their approval, and when they tried to provide input, it all got pushed to the wayside. Konietzko further stated the following.
A, we didn't want it to be done at all before anyone was attached. We didn't want... And then B, if it was going to be done, we wanted to do it, but they weren't going to let us. C, when they attached Night, we just thought, well, this is what we've been dealt. We'll offer help when it's asked of us, and if it's not, we'll stay out of the way. And in the beginning, it was more positive, and we offered help, but then, we had a big falling out, and whatever. It's a long. I mean, I would need like 2 weeks to tell you this story, and in the end, what do you get? A completely the only thing that can be said, it was a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. Yikes. You know your movie's bad when the OG creators want nothing to do with it. But with the poor word of mouth, would this affect the box office? No. The film would earn $131 million domestically, $187 million internationally, adding up to a worldwide gross of $319 million, becoming Nickelodeon's fourth highest grossing film at the time of this recording. Just behind the likes of the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water, The Adventures of Tintin, and the 2014 Ninja Turtles movie. However, the film would later win 5 out of 9 Razzies, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst Supporting Actor for Jackson Rathbone being nominated for both this movie and the Twilight Saga Eclipse, and Worst Eye-Gouging Misuse of 3D, beating out the likes of Saw 3D, Cats and Dogs The Revenge of Kitty Galore, and The Nutcracker in 3D. After everything the cast and crew went through, their careers would still be alive while some careers would be dead in the water. For Nora Ringer, the next film he would star in was 2011's Cowboys and Aliens, and he never acted again. Nicola Peltz would star in Transformers Age of Extinction, and marry Brooklyn Beckham. Jackson Rathbone would later still have a career, starring in some forgettable schlock. Seychelle Gabrielle would later voice Asami on The Legend of Korra, and Randall Duke Kim would also have a steady career voicing Master Oogway in future Kung Fu Panda installments, and playing the Doctor in John Wick 1 and 3. Like Seychelle Gabrielle, he He would surprisingly return to the Avatar franchise, voicing the live-action Wan Shi Tong in the Netflix Avatar The Last Airbender series. And I wonder how that Dev Patel kid is doing. Wow. I'm impressed. And what of Shyamalan? What has he learned after this disaster? He would later direct another big-budgeted bomb with 2013's After Earth. Then he signed a 5-picture deal with Universal, all the while financing the movies out of his pockets, where his films there would surprisingly get good word of mouth. Well, 3 out of 5 ain't that bad of a streak. And he would later admit that he was wrong for the project in a 2019 lecture at the NYU Stern School of Business, stating the following:
There has always been this inexorable pull to join the group, a constant seduction in the form of whatever you want to tally, in the form of money or safety, ease, not getting criticized. I did these movies, and I rightfully got crushed because they rightfully said, you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe in your own voice, and you don't believe in your values.
In the end, The Last Airbender is a cautionary tale on how not to adapt a popular show into a feature-length live-action film and learning to regret your biggest mistakes. So was Shyamalan the one to blame for all this?
The answer is yes and no.
Thanks for that, Mephiles. Here's why. He may have a passionate love for the show, thanks to one of his daughters, but it was Paramount's fault for all the stupid decisions that made the movie a big mess that it is, and it's honestly really upsetting rewatching the behind-the-scenes featurettes, seeing everyone so passionate for the original series while making this movie, only for the final result to end up being this god-awful piece of shit movie. Thankfully, the reputation of the Avatar franchise would still be strong with the release of The Legend of Korra, comics published at Dark Horse, the merchandise continuing to sell well, another live-action adaptation over at Netflix, and there's even a new studio dedicated to the franchise called Avatar Studios. Avatar The Last Airbender continues to be one of the most influential shows over 2 decades since it began airing on Nickelodeon, while The Last Airbender 2010 continues to be one of the worst movies of all time for simply failing to understand what made the show so iconic.